Hey, this is Bill Simmons from the Bill Simmons Podcast, here to help you make the most of your summer with Michelob Ultra, a superior light beer worth playing for. Play for it with the guys when you're competing to see who can sink more birdies on the golf course, because winning tastes even better with Ultra on the line. Play for Ultra. Fill your fridge with Michelob Ultra this summer. Enjoy responsibly. Copyright 2025 Anheuser-Busch Michelob Ultra Light Beer, St. Louis, Missouri.
Wish you could become a morning person? You know the type, up before the sun, early morning runs, first one to the office with donuts and a smile. How do they do it? Easy. With the new Galaxy Watch 8, sleep tracking and personalized insights from Samsung Health help you improve so you can wake up to a whole new you. One who, dare I say it, skips the snooze? It's possible. Train your sleep with Galaxy Watch 8. Learn more at Samsung.com. Requires compatible Samsung Galaxy phone, Samsung Health app, and Samsung account.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Chris Wynn, and welcome to How Are the Podcast, and welcome to our Sunday supplement. As you join us in the morning after the night before, and we wake up bright and early on the back of a Sunderland victory at Nottingham Forest that sees us sitting fourth in the Premier League before Sunday's fixtures, which isn't quite as good as the third in the Premier League table when we recorded after the final whistle. But we're still getting those nosebleeds riding so high in the table. So, of course, we want to go through it, a great win. Like that in detail. So I have a couple of gentlemen kind enough to spend their Sunday morning with me to do just that. And first up, we have Martin Wanless. Hello, Martin.
Hello, Chris. Yeah, look, we were third for a brief moment after the game, weren't we? Fourth. I'll take fourth. If we end up fourth at the end of the season, I'll settle for that. So, it's all good at the moment, isn't it?
Well, me and you were lucky enough to, or unlucky enough, depending which way you look at it, to live through the Peter Reid eras. We're old enough. That we were sitting in the likes of third in the Premier League and fourth in the Premier League. I mean, is it a bit of a moment to pinch ourselves at the minute?
I think it's really important that we stop and appreciate where we are and what we've actually done over the past few seasons. You know, we've all witnessed the drop that the club had and the resurgence that we've had over the past 5-6 years. But look, I think even the most optimistic Sunderland supporter wouldn't have thought that at this point of the season we would be where we are. So I think it's probably smart to take stock a little bit and just appreciate what we've done and look forward to what can come, because as we've talked about on numerous occasions, this is still a team that's learning about each other, learning how to play with each other. We haven't sort of seen the full potential of a number of the players who've joined in the summer, and we just don't know where that ceiling is. So I think it's it's fantastic, and we can look forward positively to whatever's going to come. All of the ups and downs are going to come over the next few months.
That's it. We can bathe in sitting in a Champions League place, which isn't a bad thing. But I did say we had a second man on the pod, and as anyone who listens regularly, we always like an expert on How Are the Podcast to tell us the things we are likely to miss. And we have just the man. He's been one of the voices that has been synonymous with following Sunderland over the years, where he's shown us the how and the why things happen on the pitch on a weekly basis, because we are, of course, joined by none other than Danny Collins. Hello, Danny.
Good morning, lads. How are we doing?
Yeah, well, brilliant. I mean, you ask
Fantastic.
Sunderland fan that at the minute, Danny. I mean, there's only one answer, isn't there?
Yeah, no, it's been a fantastic start to the season. You've just mentioned it there, and other than the slight blip at Burnley, faultless from the boys, to be honest, isn't it? And as you said, I don't think any Sunderland fan, if they were honest, would see us at this moment in time sat fourth in the table. As you say, third for a brief moment, but Spurs spoiled that with a late equaliser last night and knocked us down to fourth. So if we're not careful, we'll end up out of these Champions League places if we carry on.
I mean, what a ridiculous sentence that is. Spurs scored a late winner to knock us down into fourth. I mean, it's just absolutely ridiculous. But you know, and your voice sounds a bit croaky because you were trying to speak above the Sunderland fans at the side of the pitch.
Yeah, so I got asked by the club obviously yesterday to go down and we'd do a new sort of feature thing with like an on the road. I've done one years ago, I think with Connor, just a bit of a vlog. So we were in with the fans before the game and obviously during the game. And as you know, it's quite loud, isn't it, with the away support there? So probably about 3,000 or so in behind the goal and making a lot of noise. So I was mic'd up, trying to talk and go through a few bits and bobs as the game was going on, which was quite difficult. So I've left most of my voice back in Nottingham.
Well, I mean, just quickly to catch up. I mean, the last time we spoke to you was after the playoff final. I think it was late May. I think it was. So you know, I think then it was kind of you were going to speak to the club, and you didn't quite know how things were going to pan out because we've spoken to a lot of journalists over the summer. And they've just said, you know, the likes of Nick Barnes, obviously, and Simon O'Rourke, who've been through the League One years, and you know they were able to put a sun lounger up in the press conference because there was nobody else there, and now they said it's suddenly a scrum and everyone wants a piece of Sunderland. So how have you found that your role having to change because of rules and whatever?
Yeah, I mean, as you say there, me and Frankie obviously been on the comms for 6 or 7 seasons, as you say, taking over in League One when there's no fans in the ground. You know, coming up against the likes of your Fleetwoods and some of the lesser sides, without any disrespect. And then obviously going on the journey really with the fans and the players and the amount of turnover of players and managers we've seen as well over the last several years. And then to get to the Premier League, and I think they're saying to do with rules and regs really, broadcasting rights, that we unfortunately can't stream the games this year. So yeah, I've stepped into a new role at the stadium with Frankie. Home games, we're in Monty's Lounge, hosting on the stage there. So we get some of the ex-players up. Obviously, we had Kev Phillips came in the other week, and Lorik Sarna was in with us last week. So we get him up for a 10-15 minute chat. We debrief the last games pretty much like we used to on the show really, before the game and after. And then obviously we get one of the lads up who's man of the match or who's done well in the game to come up and have a 10-minute chat with us as well. So that's the shift for the home games. And then away games, nothing for us at the minute unless it's a stream game or a Sky game like it was yesterday. So I left Frankie back at the stadium. He was in Quinn's Bar. I think he had Lee Howie and Gordon Armstrong with him. Well, I got the road trip down to Nottingham. So, and that's the first game, strange really, other than Wembley, obviously for the final, but it's the first away game I've seen is actually live, because usually me and Frankie were back at the stadium like with a couple of monitors to do the comms. And as Frankie would tell you, he's reliant on the EFL cameraman. So.
Not anymore. And Rob Mason used to tell us you had to go and hide away in your cupboard.
Yeah, a little cupboard. Yeah, so it was like a 20-inch monitor, something like that. So some of the tougher games, the likes of Loftus Road, you know, this where it's quite compact and it's tight, especially from my point of view, where you're trying to see the formations, what's happening, the changes and stuff. Yeah. So it's a lot easier for home games when you're on the gantry and you've got everything in front of you. So, but even yesterday, I'm still trying to get used to not having the monitor, because we used to have a little monitor on the gantry with us as well, you know, for replays to see what was happening, key moments. For instance, yesterday we're at the far end, so when we've scored, we didn't have a clue what's going on. I thought Granit Xhaka, I'm right behind him. I thought he's going to pull the trigger. Then he stands it up to the far post, and then after that, couldn't make out what was going on. The ball's gone in. We weren't sure with VAR what was going on. So until I've seen the highlights back last night, then you know what's happened.
Yeah, like a typical fan who hasn't got a clue. I mean, I remember seeing Michael Bridges score his first goal and nobody knew because all the players ran back out from the fog, telling the fans that had actually scored, and none of the fans actually witnessed it. But yeah, I mean, just because you saw us all the way through League One, and like you said, you came in when nobody was watching the team, and you know, I mean, you could almost argue you saw us hit rock bottom, and you followed us all the way through. I mean, could you see us moving so quickly at some point and going so big in terms of spending, you know, 200 million on 14 players? I mean, was there any signs from, you know, within the club that when this happens, it's going to happen big?
Well, funny enough, somebody said yesterday in the media room after the game yesterday, and they said about this time last year, or was it a little bit before, we had Michael Beale in charge. If you'd have said to us where we were under Michael Beale in 12 months' time, 15 months' time, we're going to be sat third in the Premier League, you'd have been laughed at and probably put in a padded cell. But it's mad how football can change. And as you say, looking at the summer transfers, and even after Wembley, and I was thinking pretty much on the way home, right, where do we need to look to strengthen? And I was probably thinking 6, maybe 7 players coming in, looking at various, and then you're hoping that the lads we've got in can adapt and can kick on and progress in the Premier League. And obviously you've got the likes of Trey Hume, 1 or 2 others, Enzo, who were here last year, who are getting opportunities, Chrissy Rigg as well, getting in there now. But then you obviously need a bit of experience first up and a bit of quality to go with that. And I think, as we can all see, the club have managed to do that. And as well, the key for me, I think, was doing business early, because I always say, obviously, I've not been a manager or a head coach, but I was thinking, if I'm in that position, I'd want to get me players in early over the summer. Nothing worse than you're sitting around 5-6 weeks, and then there's a big scramble 2 weeks before you're due back in, and then you're trying to get your methods and your philosophy, if you like, and your blueprint into the players, and this is how we like to play. And then there's still a lot of bodies coming through the door, whereas we started to do business quite early, didn't we? And obviously, day after day, it seemed to be a new signing coming through the door. So, excuse me, I was thinking, what are the lads from last season thinking when every day they're going into training, and there's another new face coming through the door? And I can imagine it was carnage in the changing rooms at the training ground. All the lockers getting changed, the names constantly getting changed in the locker room there. So it's but it's football, it's a ruthless business. And you do feel for the likes of Dan Neil and Pato, who played a big part in getting us back to the Premier League. And all of a sudden now they're sat on the bench and other lads are coming in, taking their places. So it's a tough world, but that's the business of football.
Well, I wanted to ask you on that, Danny, because you obviously went through that experience of stepping up in your career. Now, I'm just wondering, if back in the day that had happened, where suddenly they just basically bought a new team, and and not only were you down the pecking order, but let's say that you, almost to the extent you saw Alan Brown's comments at Middlesbrough, but almost to the extent where you were just dismissed as a Premier League player and said, well, actually, we just don't think you're good enough, so we're not even going to give you an opportunity to prove yourself. I mean,
yeah.
How can you put yourself in that position during your career, if that had happened? I mean, because the players, I mean, they must almost take it personally.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So obviously you go back to when I came in under Mick. So I'd come in from League Two. I mean, I was pretty fresh into League Two because we'd won the National League with Chester. So I think I was about 12 games into my career at League Two level. And then obviously I got a call to say Sunderland were interested, and then Sunderland was sat 4th in the Championship. So that itself was a big step up again, isn't it? And then obviously we went on to win the league that year. So I've gone from pretty much in less than 12 months going from a promoted National League player to then going up my debut at Highbury against Thierry Henry, Robin Van Persie and Robert Pires. So, yeah. But obviously it was a big learning curve, as we know. Yeah, but there was the likes of Dean Whitehead as well, similar, Liam Lawrence, coming from, was it Mansfield and Oxford? So Mick had brought a lot of us in from some of the lower leagues, but I only played, I think, 11 or 12 games in that first season, because when I came in, it was Gary Breen, Stevie Caldwell, Stephen Wright, and who was playing left back, George McCartney. They were doing well, so I couldn't really get in the team at the time as well. So I was a bit part player in the first season, and then all of a sudden you're going into that next step, and you're coming up against these guys who I'd been watching regularly on the telly about 12 months earlier. But listen, as a player, you want to obviously play at the highest level, get an opportunity, as the likes of Alan Brown and 1 or 2 others have said. They feel disappointed, but as I said there, it's a tough world, and the club are feeling now, listen, it's been 8 years or so since we've been out the top flight. We need to, we're back there now, and it's tough if we come back down. So we want to make a good go of it, and we're going to have to spend a few quid and have a real good go at it. And listen, we're early into the season, of course, but we've had a great start. And as we said there, we'll get onto the players, I'm sure, but some of the players they brought in have certainly strengthened us, haven't they?
Yeah, that's it. And we'll get into the game, because we'll try and give your voice a little break every now and again, Danny. But we'll get into the game. And Martin, because we've got our guru for the starting 11 on match days, Martin, and we looked at the team news, and how far was it off what you predicted then?
It was only one player off. I was one player out. And it was interesting. I was listening to the pod that you and Gavin Andrew did prior to the game. And, there was all sorts of talk about who would play left back and whether Trey Hume would go over there and who would, step into Diarra's position. I thought Riggs starting was just a certainty. given that his Premier League full debut had been curtailed early by Ronaldo's sending off last week. And that wasn't a surprise. And also, I think, Masuaku has been brought in to compete at fullback, hasn't he? So if we hadn't put him in at left back, if Ronaldo's out, then what sort of message does it send to him? It says that we don't have any confidence in him whatsoever. So I thought that was a nailed on certainty as well, which kind of transpired to be correct. I did think after Ballard's performance, he would figure, especially against Chris Wood. And I just really like Ballard as a centre back. And while Mukiele and Alderete have done fantastically well, I did suspect Ballard might come in, but I didn't think we'd change the formation. I just don't see us going to a back five from the off anytime soon. So my one thing I got incorrect was I thought Hume might drop out, because I thought there would be a spotlight on him after last week's very good tackle on Morgan Rogers. And I thought Forest would maybe try to target him a bit, which I actually think they did. And we'll get into the action shortly. But I thought Forest did target Trey Hume, both in terms of a defensive thing, but also in terms of him tackling. I thought they were reacting to him and trying to get him into a spot of bother. So I thought Ballard would come in for Hume. But I was one off. Close.
Yeah, how do you see that, Danny? Because a lot of people were talking about that after the Villa game when Ballard, and actually every game really, because Ballard's been fantastic going into last season and spilling into this one. But you've got that partnership of Mukiele, Alderete, and I suppose Roofs. The three of them have been working well together. But then you've got Ballard playing out of his skin, and people were saying, "Well, change the formation because we've got a player playing so well." But I think the manager just thinks, well, no, it's a fantastic problem to have, and I've got a fantastic player who's ready to come in when needed.
Yeah, no, listen, I listened to your pod. I think the only player you didn't mention for left back was Callum McFadzean at the time, wasn't it? But he'll have weighed it up, and I think Regis does prefer his sort of 4-3-3 really, and as well as Dan did coming on last week as well, and he is a big physical presence in both boxes, isn't he? I just thought he was going to stick with that, and I wasn't surprised. And I did, without listening to you lads naming your team, that was what I thought. It was straight swap at left back, bringing Masuaku in there. It was obviously, I think, a few question marks whether he'd be fit enough. But listen, I think if we're honest, he did struggle a little bit out there at the start of the game. His first touch, by the way, was excellent, wasn't he? He brought the ball down, opened himself up and popped it out to the left. He settled in well, but then he had a couple of tough moments. But as you said, Trey did as well. I thought the wingers for Forest were excellent early on, driving at them and causing us problems down the flanks. So he's had his first start, Masuaku, out there, hasn't he? So we'll have to see what he looks at for United away next game. But he will have maybe had a bit of a discussion with his staff and thinking, do we look at maybe going to a 3, put Dan in the middle, split the 2, Mukiele obviously, and then you've got Alderete with his left foot for balance anyway, and then Trey's capable at right wing back. So I had a look at it like that as well. But then that's what he went with, and we're sat here this morning and you'd say, obviously it's worked out, we kept the clean sheet. Obviously, yes, it was backs to the wall for a lot of the second half, wasn't it? But I've been so impressed. Roof's fantastic again yesterday, and Alderete, Rolls Royce, isn't he? And Mukiele as well. So yeah, some as we said there, some of the additions have been fantastic. But Dan Ballard will be, he started the season, then he picked up that injury at Burnley, and then obviously he's taking his place on the bench now, but you might have to wait. And he knows that. It's not one of those where you can go knocking on the manager's door and saying, why aren't I getting back in? He'll just say, well, come and have a look at the video of what these two lads have done at the weekend. So he'll have to be patient. He'll get himself back in, I'm sure.
Yeah, just quickly one for you, Danny, just on the team sheet, because you've seen Luke O'Nien behind the scenes, closer quarters than me and Martin, and he was on the bench for the first time in the Premier League. I mean, I just imagine how giddy he was being on the bench. But we can't wait for him to get on the pitch. But it's just nice to see him on the bench, isn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, and at half time yesterday, he was like a big kid having his kick around with a couple of the lads. I think him and Dan Neil. But yeah, that's just the enthusiasm he's got, hasn't he? And you felt for him again going back to the playoff final. What was it? Less than a minute and a half into the game, and he's going off with his shoulder injury, but he's obviously getting back to fitness there now, and he'll be itching to get on, as you say, whether it's 5 minutes, 50 minutes, whatever, just to get on the pitch for Sunderland, because he's been on the journey, obviously more so than anyone, hasn't he? So good to see him back, kitted up, but he'll be itching to get some game time.
Yeah. Yeah, and going into the game, Martin, I mean, I thought that first half an hour, say, was almost like watching the same game against Palace in some ways. And again, I mentioned against Palace that I thought that was almost our blueprint for away performances in the Premier League. And looking at that first half an hour, we had a couple of half chances. Isidore actually had the first real shot on target, I think, after about 8 minutes. When Forrest were being clumsy and he ended up swinging his leg at a shot, and I think it just went wide. But yeah, in that first half an hour, we had to soak up a lot of pressure, and they had a lot of possession, but we just kept them at arm's length, didn't we?
Yeah, look, and I think there's a risk when you look at some of these sort of external commentary about how we play, that you can kind of, if you don't watch us, you can be fooled into thinking that we kind of ride our luck a lot and just defend. And we don't. Like, very early on in that game yesterday, we controlled the very early stages of the game. We had quite a lot of possession. I thought Forrest would come at us from the off, I think, again, you kind of take into your mind about the context of this game for Forrest, right? It's Postecoglou's first game at home. He's had a tough run of fixtures away from home, and he hasn't won a game yet for Forrest. He will have been really wanting that team to go off flying at us, because, if they get an early goal, it's a completely different game for us to handle. We're at our most dangerous when we've, obviously we're not chasing the game, when we can kind of react to what the opposition do. And I was kind of surprised with how they approached the game from a team selection point of view, and actually went into the first sort of 10, 15 minutes of the game, because they let us have possession. We kind of dictated that very early stage of the game. Obviously, as the first half wore on, they were naturally going to get more possession, but they had possession in their half or in midfield. They didn't have tons of possession. They weren't camped outside our box trying to ping balls in and put us under loads of pressure in the box. I thought we held them really well structurally as a team. We held them in that midfield area and allowed them to have a lot of the ball. And look, I think the biggest chance up to that point was the Isidore chance, as you mentioned, Chris. And I thought that was a brilliant chance. And I know we'll come on later on to talk about, the chance that Forrest had. And again, the narrative is, Chris Wood missed this chance, the referee gave this. I thought Isidore's chance was a really, really good chance that he should get on target. And, yes, it came from a bit of a sort of bobbly mistake that happened outside the box, but it was still a great chance. So you're looking in those early stages, and I was really comfortable watching the game. I thought we're handling it really well. And even when we let the opposition have possession, you can see what the intention is when we win possession. You can see the long diags going out to Talby. You can see Masuaku and Lefay and Siddiqui doing that little triangle thing that they've been doing on the left-hand side. And I just thought we looked comfortable. Is probably the best. And I actually thought it was a better opening than the Palace game. I thought, because we'd created that chance, I thought we looked a little more dangerous.
By the way, Martin, I suppose it's worth mentioning at this point that this episode of How Are the Podcast is brought to you in association with the very good people at NORDVPN.
It is. And Chris, I don't know how much you know about VPNs and all that sort of stuff, but I use NordVPN quite a lot. Travel about the place for work, and obviously being over here in Australia, coming back home every now and again to catch up with the friends and family, go to the match, that sort of thing. NordVPN's been a bit of a lifesaver for me, because I'll tell you for why, Christopher. I'll tell you for why. I'm always a bit dubious about connecting to the public Wi-Fi, especially when you go abroad. I know there's probably nothing wrong with it, but you want to be on the safe side, don't you? And with NordVPN, you can just connect to a private network with one click, or you can even set it to auto-connect, and you've got your cybersecurity and your privacy and all that sort of stuff sorted, so you can browse the internet and you can feel pretty secure about it all. But you know what? It's not just about the security. And I'll give you an example. A few months ago, I was traveling home. I had a few hours in Singapore airport, and we were playing last season. And obviously, the stream of the games over here, I'm paying for the streaming service, but I wasn't able to connect to that streaming service that I was subscribed to, being in an airport in Singapore. So I was able to change my virtual location on NordVPN, and the game was on. And I just sat there having a cup of coffee in Singapore airport, watching us.
Yeah. Well, a year ago, I didn't even know about what VPNs are all about, but it was Gav, because he's our IT guru, made sure I was on the case, because like you said, that's not the, that's the biggest benefit, because I was in Lithuania and had to do exactly the same thing over the summer. Getting access to the stuff you've paid for when you're overseas, safely and securely. And you can easily switch your virtual locations to access apps and websites in other countries, and you can use it on up to 10 devices as well. So if you're interested in trying NordVPN, we've negotiated a great deal. Simply go to nordvpn.com/Hawaii, and you'll not only get an exclusive discount, but you'll also get an extra 4 months absolutely free. I mean, you can't beat that, can you? And don't forget, NordVPN offers a 30-day money-back guarantee too. So there's absolutely no risk at all. And I'll give you that address again. It's nordvpn.com/Hawaii. And you'll find a link in the show description notes for today as well. So enjoy that offer on us. I'm Danny, obviously an ex-Forest player as well, so you might be able to tell us a little bit about that. But yeah, I mean, you've heard Sunderland's manager also talk about that the first half in games being structured and organised, and I think he almost takes advantage of that, where he tries to kind of ramp up the game and almost make the second half a little bit chaotic and a little bit more, open, I suppose, where we can maybe nick one. But that first period of that first half, I mentioned on the preview, because of the situation Martin described, I was expecting Forest just to really come at us, especially with Ange ball and all of that. But I expected them to really push on, and it never really happened. I felt comfortable in that first half now.
Yeah, certainly the first five. Again, I'm watching it and doing the little bits on the mic, and then first 5 minutes they didn't really press us. They sat off. We had all the ball, knocked it around quite nicely. And then I thought just after that, really, going on to the Isidore one, yeah, it's a bit of a half chance on the spin, isn't it, really? And I think it's Milenkovic. He puts it through his legs, and keeper's rooted cells, and if it's on target, it's in the back of the net. But then they did come into it, Forest. They had a lot of possession, as Martin says, more so sort of middle of the pitch, really, and shadow boxing, wasn't it, where they were working it, looking for that opening. Once or twice, the wingers almost got in, didn't they? And then I said, how many saves has Roop had to make, really, in that first half? He hasn't really, has he? A couple of balls come in, he's dealt with. Defenders have helped him out, and Chris Wood had one or two half chances with the headers. So other than that, yes, Forest had a lot of possession, but didn't really work Roots as much as they would have liked, really. Setting off, I thought, again, similar pattern. We started really well the first few minutes, a couple of half openings for ourselves, and then I just felt, from our point of view, we got a little bit deep. We sat in a little bit too much. The big test for me is going to come when we haven't conceded a goal in the first. That was the first goal yesterday, wasn't it? In any half, in the first half, with Alderete scoring for us there, and Forest hadn't conceded at home in the first half. So the test for us is going to come when we concede early on or we go behind, and then we've got to come and chase the game a little bit. Whereas yesterday we get ourselves in front, then we come out second half, and I think we've got players to hit teams on the counter attack and maybe put the ball in behind for Isidore a little bit more. There was one later on, wasn't it, yesterday, where he got in behind, stretched it, and almost got a chance on goal. Yeah. But the little concern was, as I say, I'm at the other end, so I'm behind cells, and all the players at our end. I just felt we were getting a little bit deep. Of course, you want to go into a low block, but I just felt when their keeper has it, when he's setting up from goal, we were retreating really, really deep, and I was thinking, can we be a little bit braver? But then we come away, we've got the clean sheet, we've got the 3 points on the board, so you can't argue what's happened. But the test is going to come when we go a goal down, and then we've got to come out a little bit and chase the game, really. But it's worked at Palace, and it's worked again yesterday. And when you've got the quality, the two centre-backs, and obviously the goalkeeper we've got, then they're certainly going to shut out the opposition more often than not.
Yeah. Well, you did say we took the lead. And Martin, I just want to actually start, and I did this on the pod after the game, but I think it started a moment before when the ball was actually at Roos's feet. And he basically sucked all of the Forest side in to put the pressure on, to kind of put the press on. And he played a ball. He whipped a ball into Siddiqui almost on the halfway line. That set Siddiqui away. And then Siddiqui charged forward, had a shot charged down. And then the play all came from that. But then the incident did happen a few seconds later between Hume and Dominguez. And I just assumed at the time, when the referee blew his whistle, I thought it was a Nottingham Forest free kick, I have to admit.
I did too. That was my initial reaction. But going back to Roofs, I think that was a highlight of the game yesterday, was his distribution. And, that pass to Siddiqui that he made, it split pretty much 3 lines of the Forest defence, and it immediately got us onto the front foot. And I think, when you talk about the profile of goalkeeper that they've obviously targeted, having somebody who's got that attribute to be able to play the ball with the feet, draw players out and be comfortable drawing the opposition out, to then work angles and work triangles to pass the ball through those lines, has obviously been something that they've targeted. And look, his distribution is just a bonus, really, because he's such a fantastic goalkeeper. And Danny, I wanted to ask you about this actually before we get into that free kick bit. Like, what difference does it make as a defender to have a goalkeeper that's consistently going to come for those balls? Because some keepers will come sometimes and not come other times, but he seems to come and dominate that box. And as a centre half, it must be is it a reassurance to have a keeper who is going to do that?
Yeah, I think, funny enough, we were on after the game yesterday in the media lounge, just having a chat about it, and just his calming influence as well, really, on the lads at the back. And I'd go back to playing with Tommy Sorensen, not Sunderland, but at Stoke. I had Tommy behind me there, and every time the ball come in, you just turn around, start jogging up the pitch, because just come those big white gloves, just plucking it out the air. And I'm watching Roofs live yesterday, obviously behind the goal, certainly first half, and then at the far end second half where he was busier. Just his calming presence, and as you say, moves the ball. He's almost like an outfield player, isn't he? Sort of just tucked in behind the 2 centre backs and just comfortable. And the pass that Chris mentions there, where he just took it, Forrest is starting to try and press, and he just pops it through that little corridor into Siddiqui, and then he gets us up the pitch with a good driving run. But fantastic to have a keeper like that behind you. And again, going back earlier, Anthony Patterson, he'd be sat there disappointed that Roofs has come in and taken the gloves off him, but he's got to watch and he's got to learn now. And what's he doing? What I wasn't doing, why have they replaced me with him? And just maybe just does things a little bit quicker in terms of moving the ball and distribution and all that sort of goalkeeping malarkey, really. And he's got to learn from that, because he's still young, Pato. But Roofs has certainly settled in well, hasn't he?
Oh, brilliant! Yeah, absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
But going back to the decision to give us the free kick, again, my instant reaction was he's given a free kick against Hume. But, and I'm not saying this with a hint of bias at all, right? But it's a brilliant decision, because at the start of the season, referees were told to clamp down on simulation and also feigning injury, right? And you can see he goes down, and whether he gets a slight touch or not, you can debate all day. I can't tell from the angles I've seen, but he absolutely feigns injury to try to get Hume in trouble. And I mentioned at the start of the pod, I think they were targeting Hume for that. We saw the winger go past Hume early on and dive, and I think again he was trying to get Hume in trouble. I think this one was a clear case of their pinpointing, whether it was pinpointing Hume or just trying to win a free kick, but he feigned injury 100%, because he went down, screamed, and then he glanced up at the referee, and he glanced up just when the referee turned back. So it's an absolutely spot on decision. The only controversy about it is you don't see it very often, and we haven't seen it often enough, but I think it was absolutely spot on.
Especially as well, because you're at the City ground, aren't you? So, and actually at the other end, I was in 3,000 Sunderland fans, and straight away, as you say, it looks a 50-50. On first view, it looks like Trey's gone in with his boot like that, and as he followed through onto him, but we're all thinking, Trey's in the book here. And then all of a sudden, everyone's like, what's happened here? But anyway, it is a good call. I've seen it back on the replays. I think there's not a lot of contact, if any. And as you say there, he's trying to kid the ref on, but it's a brave call, if you like, because we're the away team as well. So, and it leads to the goal, doesn't it? So,
well, and in some respects, it's probably good for the referee. It did lead to a goal. It makes it a bigger call because of what consequently happens, but it'll get more coverage, right? And people will talk about it more. And I think as the week goes on, you'll see them say it was for feigning injury. We're stamping down on it this season, and we'll actually maybe see more referees do it. But it was a really brave call for the referee. And look, he got stick, and he did get stick all day after that, didn't he, from the Forest fans? And the same thing would have happened at the Stadium Light, no doubt. But when you watch it back in the cold light of day, you go, you know what, that is actually a really, a brave call, but a very, very good call as well.
Yeah,
and Yeah,
No,
there was
go
a
on,
yellow
sorry.
card given out to Forest's centre half as well for complaining, which I think put him on the edge for the rest of the game as well.
Yeah, no, it is. It's a great call, as you say there. There was one you mentioned of the winger. It was Ndoye, I think, went past Trait looking for
Yeah.
one because I think Siddiqui got booked early on, didn't you? And the type of player is, I think it was 8 minutes in, and you're worried then for him for the length of the game, then the way he plays his game. But then for Trait, I say get away with that one. It's a good call from the ref, but he should have maybe booked the winger as well for trying to kid on when he went down looking for the free kick as well, making his way into the box. But that's a good call. It'd be interesting to see what the likes of Howard Webb, I know he does that review program, doesn't he? Or the other refs come out with and say about that one, because it's the first one we've sort of seen really in terms of that, isn't it? Where he's actually played the ball, hasn't he? And then he's booked him, and then a few of the players are looking around, what's happened here? But fair play to the ref.
And I do actually think it was because I think there was 2 or 3 incidents of Forest going down easily. I think that the yellow card was an accumulation of Forest
those early
doing
ones,
it. Yeah, almost to try and stamp it out. But I wanted to talk to you about the goal, Danny, because you've been talking to us for years and years. Now, I've always loved listening to you talk about the set pieces afterwards because you always pick up on something. And this one, I wanted to pick your brains because obviously a Xhaka free kick, back post, Alderete completely on his own. Now, it did go back and show the Masuaku block. And VAR were potentially looking at that. Then they were looking at an offside. Great header. You could question the keeper. Wood, awful defending at the back post. But do you think that Masuaku block was just Masuaku doing something that he just thinks is a bit sneaky, or is that a set piece play that we'd set up?
Again, they would only know. I'm stood right behind it, sort of level with the 6-yard box, and I said to obviously the media lad I was working with, I said, "Oh, this is." I think was it Augsburg in pre-season where he hit the crossbar late on. Do you remember he had a free kick and he rattled the crossbar?
Yeah.
So I'm thinking it's similar position. He'll whip this over the wall, probably looking at that top left corner, and then as he stood it up to the far post, again it looked a bit from where we were, carnage going on. The ball drops in the net, and we weren't sure what was happening. But now I've seen it back, so yeah, I think. Masuaku, I think you always try and look at getting somebody free round. I think Dennis Serkin done it quite well over the last couple of seasons in the Championship, didn't he? But yeah, Chris Wood, you could say maybe a centre forward back there trying to help out. Yes, he's a big lump, isn't he? But when it's a lot of movement going on, he's probably fixated on the ball, what's happening, instead of getting touch tight, getting an arm around Alderete at the far post, and he gets himself in free. Masuaku does a decent enough job in blocking the others. And then, Sells, I think he sort of comes, doesn't he? But then he puts the brakes on. I think if he carries on, he narrows the gap again a little bit closer, and it probably hits him. But he sort of puts the brakes on and just keeps that sort of 2-meter gap between himself and Alderete. And then obviously that's all it takes. And then he's opened his account for us. So Forest will have a look at it, I'm sure, in the meeting room, debrief it, and where they've gone wrong. But from our point of view, whether it's come off the training ground or whether it's off the cuff, and the lads, Xhaka might have just had a little word with Alderete, say, I'm going to stand it up to the far post for you. So we don't know. Again, you'd have to ask Granite or one of the lads in an interview, I guess.
Yeah. Well, since we've employed a set piece coach in the summer, we'll have to give him credit for that, I suppose. But,
get him off.
But Martin on the goal. It's Xhaka's 3rd assist of the season in 6 games. I think he's got the assist for our last 3 goals. It was our first goal before the hour mark. But it just shows that how much we're taking advantage of set pieces and making that a big part of our game this season.
Well, I think you've got to, haven't you? And last season we didn't do it as much as you would have liked to have seen us do it. But we've had the Dan Ballard goal in the last seconds against Coventry from a corner. We've scored a few this season, and it's obviously something that they've been working on. But with a better quality of delivery that Xhaka provides, you're going to naturally get more opportunities, aren't you? So there's probably a combination of things. But as you say, we've employed a set piece coach. There's obviously some work, an awful lot of work being done in those set pieces, and you've got to look for those small advantages, don't you? Whether it's a long throw, set pieces, corners, whatever it is, you've got to look for those little bits of advantage that you can get. And I think, again, our team, we don't know how good they can potentially be. We know what we can see now, and we see a lot of good things, a lot of potential. But set pieces are a real leveler. It's about organisation. It's about the plan. I think if we can take more advantage of those opportunities when we get them, as we've done so far this season, you can get some good rewards. And, not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but you're watching the highlights from the Brentford Man U game, and you're looking at how Man U would defend in set pieces, and you go, I would when we get corners and free kicks against Man U next week, I actually fancy us to take advantage and threaten their goal with those, because our organisation and our play around those set pieces is strong. And, those are the sort of things you can control within games, aren't they? So it's all credit to the work that's going on in the training field.
Yeah, massive part of football, aren't they? I was going to say, Chris, again, that's the difference in the game yesterday. And you put the hours in on the training ground, usually a Thursday, certainly a Friday. Go with it, as you say, everyone's got a set piece coach these days. You see the Villa fella last week, every time they had a long throw or a corner, everything, he was animated, he was in the technical area, he wasn't on the touchline.
Celebrities now, aren't they?
Oh, they are, aren't they? Yeah. I think Gary Neville touched on it the other week. He wasn't a fan, was he? But yeah, huge part of football. And you've heard me talk about, I preferred an outswinger or a driven ball to the far post. But then, as you say, if you've got a bit of a suspect goalkeeper, and I did watch the United game yesterday, and they were putting balls on top of the keeper. He was under a lot of pressure. So surely they'll have a look at that this week in the meeting room. They may go with in-swingers early on. It might be a rainy day down in Manchester, put balls on him, test him early on. You've got the likes of Alderete and Mukwele piling in on top of him as well. Proper old school football these days, isn't it? And long throw-ins. It's all coming back.
Yeah. I know. I'm absolutely loving it.
Yeah.
But Danny, look, that first half, because look, sometimes you can get really distracted by controversial incidents like that one and where the goal comes from, and Forest fans are up in arms. But you go in at halftime against a very good Nottingham Forest side who finished 7th last season, and they've got a top manager who's just won a European Cup. But we go in a goal up. We've had 35% of possession, but Nottingham Forest haven't had a shot on target. Now, at some point, you've just got to say, actually, that's bloody impressive, isn't it? We've put in a really good shift in that first half.
Yeah. And then what happens then as well, Chris, is their fans become frustrated because they can see they've had all the ball, but it's like, what are they doing with it? Where's that end product? They want from their point of view, they want to see Roos pulling off 2, 3, 4 saves, like he did a little bit more so in the second half. But as you say, in that first half, Chris Wood's header aside, he hasn't had a lot to do, has he? So that'll be the frustration from their point of view for 65% of the ball. So I'm sure Ange is in at half time. Yes, lads, it's all well and good. We're dominating possession, but in that final third, we need to create a little bit more. And I'm sure from our point of view, back at home on the training ground at the academy, the boys are working out of possession shape, mid-block, then dropping into a low block, being organised, who goes out and presses. Then he can make a little tactical change. He brings Dan Ballard on, then we go to a back five. I mean, I was at the far end yesterday, and I'm not even doing the comms these days, but I'm having a look at it. Like, Trey Hume's gone across the left back. Now Talby's come across. Enzo's gone inside. Traore's come on. Do you know what I mean? There's a lot happening. Gertrude has come on at right back as well. Then he had a little mazy run late on. So there was a lot happening from our point of view. And it can sometimes, I think, get on top of the coaching staff, because Regis has got to be the one who keeps the cool head, because he's probably got 3 or 4 voices behind him. I think we should do this. I think we should. And he's the one who's got to make the decision and the calls. And as we say now, sat here this morning, a lot of those calls have obviously been the right call, because we come away with yet another clean sheet.
Yeah. I thought that was interesting, Martin, actually, because I thought for first 10 minutes when we came out after half time, we were probably the better side. But then the 10 minutes after that, and the substitutions that Danny mentioned were right in the middle of this 10-minute period where Nottingham Forest had 83% possession and kind of pinned us in. But Register Bray obviously noticed this and tried to kind of change it up. But it is this kind of ebb and flow nature of Premier League games, seemingly, where sometimes you've just got to have 10, 15 minutes where you've just got to accept, right, we've just got to dig in our trenches here and just get through this.
No, I think you do. And, I think at any level, you're going to have spells where the opposition's on top and you have to be well organised and defend well. But, even though we had that spell, I agree, we started the second half, almost like we started the first half, where we were controlling the ball, controlling possession. And then we did have that spell, but Forest didn't have their first shot on goal on target until the 68th minute. So we'd ridden out that spell of pressure by being really well organised and defensively sort of well structured. And I actually thought when we went to a back five, we invited a lot more pressure on. And that's when they started having shots. I think we actually played ourselves in trouble a couple of times prior to that. I think there was certainly one where Trey Hume gave the ball away and gave them a shot and goal, which I actually thought Hume struggled a little bit yesterday. I thought defensively he found it tough going. And, Trey Hume's still a very young player, really, and he's going to get better and better with the Premier League experience he has. But, we've got good players who can challenge him for his position. I think we might see that over the coming weeks. But, they did have that possession, but again, it wasn't until 68 minutes when they had the first shot on target. And then bringing Ballard on to go to back five, I just think we kind of invited more. We fell right back, didn't we? And that might have happened anyway, regardless of whether we changed formation or not. But I think we really invited pressure, which, on another day that could have given them an equalising goal.
Just on that, Martin, I love this discussion where obviously fans have it, and again, I listen to your podcast, and where is it a back three? Is it a back five? And it's a back three when you've got good possession because you can get your wing backs high. But as you say there, on the flip side of that, if you bring Dan Ballard on, you haven't got possession, you can't get out, you haven't got an out ball, your two wing backs are pegged in alongside you. It's a back five, and you're in that low block. And I felt for Trey, that incident you're on about there yesterday where he had the ball, and he's gone across to the left, so he's come inside, back into the box on his favoured right foot. I think he's looked up, and I think the furthest player forward, I think if Wilson Isidore was still on at the time, he's on the edge of our box as well. So he's like, I don't really just want, I don't want to just shell it out or play or forward, which he probably should have done in the end, because obviously Amari Hutchinson got the strike away, I think. Yeah. And they almost score from that incident, don't they? So it was tough. But yeah, so again, love this discussion about formations, and obviously you get onto Man United with their 3-4-3, which Ruben Amorim's adamant he's got to play. But yeah, it does. Yes, if you can't get your wing backs high and have good possession of the ball, then you're getting pegged back in a back five.
Your sausage McMuffin with egg didn't change. Your receipt did. The sausage McMuffin with egg extra value meal includes a hash brown and a small coffee for just $5. Only at McDonald's for a limited time.
Prices and participation may vary.
They got Willa. They got my daughter. I need to find her. Ah!
From acclaimed director Paul Thomas Anderson.
You can save that girl.
Today, experience what is being called the best movie of the year.
This is the end of the line. Not for you.
Leonardo DiCaprio, Sean Penn, Benicio del Toro, Tiana Taylor, Chase Infinity.
Let's go!
One battle after another. Now playing only in theaters. Experience it in IMAX. Rated R. Under 17 not admitted without parent.
You can't hide.
Anyone can follow. It takes something special to be an original. Which is why the 2025 Lincoln Navigator SUV arrives with new ways of surrounding you in luxury, including the ultra-wide 48-inch panoramic display and the multi-sensory Lincoln Rejuvenate experience. A true original never stops evolving. So meet the 2025 Navigator, the original that's all new and better than ever. Learn more at Lincoln.com. Lincoln and Navigator are trademarks of Ford or its affiliates.
Well, they had three shots off the back of that Trey Hume incident. That Roofs ended up saving all three. But Danny, I did want to bring this point to you, because obviously you've been there and you've done it in these situations where that you naturally just get pinned in. Now, can you feel that as a player happening, and you almost think, well, we don't know what to do against this? And Martin mentioned the substitutions where you do go to a back five and you bring more defenders on, even if the manager doesn't necessarily tell you to drop. Is that almost a signal from the manager that you need to do that?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's just sometimes in the flow of the game, you can feel it from the crowd as well. Sometimes, I mean, again, I was in with the Sunderland fans, and as you're looking around there with 10 minutes to go, a few nails are being bitten off, and they're trying to get the lads going again, give them some energy. And then he is making changes, Regis, but then it doesn't sort of stem the flow of the pressure coming. Traore, he brings on out there to try and give us an outlet to get us up the pitch. He had one or two runs, but then swarmed, and then they get possession, and then they come back in, and we just kept dropping 20, 30 yards, didn't we? As if to say, right, 18-yard box, this is where we're getting back to, and this is where we're going to defend. And Forrest are going to have to come up with a bit of clever play, a little cute pass to try and get through us, or, Elliot Anderson's going to have to rifle one in from 25 yards. But yeah, it is tough, because I'm sure Alderete and Mukwele, by the way, they would have loved that. I love those types of games. And I said after the game, you can't beat a dirty 1-0 away from home. And that's exactly, as a centre-back and, full-back, getting back on the coat, and you feel like you've put a right shift in, you've got 3 points in the bag. And as I say, to cap it off, Alderete's got his first goal in his back pocket as well. But yeah, you're looking around and you're thinking, Christ, lads, can we get a bit of possession here? He's made 4 or 5 changes. Robbie, to be fair to him, he come on, he put himself about a little bit, tried to get hold of it, didn't he? But it just felt every time the ball went over the halfway line, there was 2 or 3 red shirts around him, and they mop it up, and then they come again. Although we did have 1 or 2 half chances, didn't we, in that second half as well, towards the end of the game.
Yeah, well, that's it. I mean, just quickly, just to finish off that point, Danny, though, but because if you're getting pinned in with about 15 minutes to go, and I purely ask because I think this is going to happen to us quite often. Sometimes, you sometimes hear shouts when you're in the crowd, people saying, get out, push out when we do get the ball out. But from a psychology point of view, when you're a defender, because that's almost your safe place, the edge of the box, that edge of the penalty area. So, I mean, how do we deal with this? Do we just accept that, right, sometimes we're just going to have to sit in and be safe and not let any space in behind? Or do we have to find some sort of way to say, okay, well, let's put a Traore or a Brobbey or a Mayenda on the halfway line and keep them there and give us an outlet?
Yeah, I certainly think so. Actually, it was funny yesterday, and someone said, for all the play they had, Forest didn't play in behind us. And I was thinking, well, they couldn't play in behind us because we were sat on, there was no space to play in behind us, really. But yeah, no, it is. As I say, I've been there, and if you're 1-0 up or you're 2-1, certainly at the Stadium of Light, because you've got the 2 scoreboards either end directly above you when you look up, and you can see the clock. If it's at 85, 86, it feels like it's stopped. But you're thinking, we're nearly there, and then naturally, it's just a natural human reaction, isn't it, to just start dropping a little bit deeper. But then, so long as your distances don't get too big, defence to midfield to attack, if you're sort of 20 yards apart and you're not allowing the opposition to find those little pockets to play in, I thought we'd done quite well, obviously, yesterday. And then they bring Gibbs White on, don't they? And obviously Elliot Anderson, the 2 sort of technicians trying to get on the ball and make things happen. And even Morgan Gibbs White didn't really have an impact on the game when he come on, did he? Looked a little bit frustrated as well. So they'll come off the pitch, Forest, thinking probably, Christ, how have we lost that game? As you say, possession aside, they've had 22 shots, only 6 on target. But they'll be thinking, we should have got a worst case, a point out of that, whereas we're getting back on the bus thinking, do you know what? We went to Palace, we come away with a point. Yes, didn't have too much in terms of going forward. And then similar again yesterday. So if you're going to do that away from home, all well and good, and we're picking up points as we are doing, and then we get back to the Stadium of Light. And I think in general, we have had a lot more possession. Because even Villa last week, we were at 60 minutes with 10 men. It didn't feel like yesterday, did it, where we had that onslaught where Villa didn't really pen us in as much as they did Forest yesterday, really. So at home, we're going to have a little bit more of an attacking threat, which I think we have done. And then away from home, if you're going to play that way and sit in there, then you've got to have your outlet at times to give the lads at the back a breather. Because if I was still playing, I'll be onto my midfielders, Granite and the lads. Any chance of you lads keeping hold of the ball for 5 minutes so we can get a little breather back here? Yeah, so that's how it works, mate. You've got to look after your department.
I would have loved to have seen how that conversation went if one of the defenders told Jackie yesterday to hold on to the ball for a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
But
to be fair, he did, didn't he? That one late on, it dropped down, and again, it would have been easy for him just to put his foot through it, but he brought it down and tried to play in a little bit of composure, which was needed. Yeah, so he certainly played his part yesterday.
Yeah. I mean, Martin, we're talking about us getting pinned in, but actually, you look at the chances they had, and I never felt that uncomfortable with the position we were in, even though, probably under a little bit too much pressure, if you like, for our liking, or for my heart, certainly. But other than that, one with 10 minutes to go where fantastic cross. I think it was Hutchinson who came on. I think Danny's already mentioned him. Great cross. I think it was from the right-hand side, cut back in on his left, crossed it in. I mean, look, Chris Wood should be scoring that. Was it 6 yards out right in front of goal, unmarked? But it's one of them, sometimes when you are under the caution, you get a bit, there are a few chances. You've got to ride your luck a little bit. Yeah. But to limit them to that, Martin, in the last 10, 15 minutes is an achievement as well.
Oh, undoubtedly. And look, I think great chance for Wood. And again, like if that game's 3-0, he probably sticks it away. But it's a pressure chance as well, isn't it? And I think that probably plays on his mind to some extent too. But, that was their best chance. We've already talked about the Isidore chance in the first half. In the closing stages of the second half, we had a good chance for Ballard from a set piece, I think. Gertrude went through and could have scored. So, we had chances up at the other end as well to get another goal. So, look, I think we again, going back to that, we were really well organised defensively. Yes, we probably sat back a bit too much, but, to limit them to that. And, again, we keep saying this about these teams that we're coming up against. They're full of quality players. the great, and we are doing so well so far to keep these teams out and limit them. And you look at what Palace did to Liverpool yesterday. Like we kept Palace out just a couple of weeks ago, so we're obviously really well drilled, well organised. The manager's got them playing in a system and formation that they know the jobs, know responsibilities, know where each other should be. And I think, it's a point that Danny will be able to give us some insight into, but, with the amount of change and new players that have come in, to immediately have the work ethic and that togetherness that team seems to have, like that must take some doing, because, you touched upon it before with the amount of change and turnover. And if you're a player there and you can't see all these players coming in, wondering what's going to go on, it must be hard or it's a challenge, isn't it, to get that team spirit, everybody on the same page. But they've done it so impressively.
Yeah, fantastic. I think even obviously playing Forest yesterday, you go back 2 seasons, they were similar, but brought even 22, 25 players or something they brought in. Obviously managed to stay up, didn't they? And then look where they ended up last season. We've obviously done it on a slightly lesser scale with 14 players, well, 15 if you include Mark Guiu, who had a short stay, but he's back at Chelsea. So we brought 14 players in. And then, you're hoping, as I said earlier, that they can settle in early. You've got the language barrier. Some of them boys are obviously fresh to English football, and certainly the Premier League, probably a little bit more of a tempo to it than what they used to as well. So I'm saying it's obviously a risk, because obviously the club have done their homework on the players who they think are capable of coming in and going straight into the side. And that's obviously been the case. And as I said earlier, you're hoping the likes of, Trey Hume, Chris Rigg, Dan Ballard, who else was there? Wilson Isidore from last year. And Mendes. So we've still got a good core of lads who got us up last year. And then obviously you've got to add to that with some quality and depth. And then, you're sort of your main focal point in the middle of the pitch, Granit Xhaka, who's got bags of experience. What's he got, 135 caps or something for Switzerland? So he's not a bad one to have in there to help the younger lads through it as well as he. So yeah, we've got a good mix in there. And I'm sure come January, they'll be reassessing and thinking, where do we look to add to now to try and keep on going? Because obviously we know we've got a tough December coming up as well. So we've got a few 6-pointers in there with Man City, haven't we, and Liverpool for the title. So we've got to come out on top in those games. And then you're looking at the window then in January and maybe adding a few more. And then obviously some lads who need some game time are going to look to go the other way as well to get some football.
Yeah, well, over the 2 windows, Danny, I think Forest brought in 29 players.
29, unbelievable.
But I just wanted to talk to you about obviously all these players, but we've mentioned them so much. But I just wanted to get you specifically on Alderete and Michele. I mean, those two. Gav said this, and I need to give him a bit of credit because we always see it's somebody else saying it. So, Gav, you're getting credit for this. Gav's said in the past that you put those two. If Manchester United scouts had went out and signed those 2 players, put them into their back four, that they'd be a better side this season and they'd be higher up in the table. Now, it's just incredible that that scouts or teams higher up haven't gone out and spotted these lads and snapped them up before we did. Yeah.
Don't let Hammer in here. You're saying it's a back 4, Chris. It's a back 3, by the way.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
No, you're exactly right. I'm not sure how much did we pay for how much were they? You'll know off the top of your head. How much did we pay for Alderete and
10 million each, weren't they?
10 million each, yeah. So absolute steal, isn't it, at this moment in time? You're looking at them pen. Certainly Alderete, I look at him because obviously my position left-sided, but his qualities, he's a big, strong lad. He can step in with the ball. Yesterday, he takes it, doesn't he? And then he knows Chris Wood's on his shoulder, but then he just puts the burners on for a little 10-yard, and centre forwards don't like putting the hard yards in, running that way, do they? So, and he's just comfortable stepping in with the ball. Mukwele, similar. I thought yesterday he had a couple of moments when we were trying to play out, as I say, right behind it, where Roofs, more often than not, we played to the right, and he was trying to look for that little pass into Trey, and it didn't quite come off a couple of times. But defensively, athletes, big, strong lads, love defending. Go back to Mukwele last week as well. Was it Marlon that came on for Villa, wasn't it, when he went through and you looked for all the money in the world he was going to go through, and he just put the burners on, got back and done enough to put him off. So the additions, and as you say, without getting ahead of ourselves, you look at some of the top Premier League sides and you're thinking, where are their scouts? How have they not spotted these lads and they've gone under the radar? So we'll keep that quiet. But yeah, fantastic to watch, and I love watching this. As I say, defensive unit there, and they've gelled really well. Language barrier, as I said, what language are they communicating in? I know football's a language, but then obviously the little detail when things are happening fast around the edge of the box, little detail which has got to go into each other, and then Roofs in behind them as well. So that little triangle there. And then you've got big Dan Ballard to come in as well. And as you mentioned earlier, Martin, I think Dan's a proper old-fashioned centre-back, and give him a credit as well. I think he's comfortable at stepping in at times with the ball. He can punch a ball through the lines, but what he gives us in both boxes as well. Sometimes you get a big lump who doesn't use their size really, but you can't say that about Dan Ballard, can you? He's 6'4", and he goes thundering into people. Last week, didn't he come on against Villa, straight into Martinez, pile of bodies in the 6-yard box. So we've got a bit of physical presence about us as well.
Yeah, that's it. Just in terms of man of the match, Martin, because Sky gave it to Granit Xhaka, and I do think it was one of them. And we said this after the Palace game. It's really tough to call because it's such a good team performance, and it's about the kind of how we're setting up as a structure. But would you have gone any different?
Oh, look, I think Xhaka was really instrumental in the victory, and I think he's really instrumental on the pitch. And we talked about it before, haven't we, in terms of you can see him barking orders and pulling players into position and making sure that we're in the right sort of shape. And Danny pointed out really late on, he took control of the ball, relieved some pressure, and was just knitting passes together nicely. Set up the goal. So look, I think you wouldn't have much argument about that. Other people talk about the goalkeeper is man of the match, but I actually don't think he had enough to do to be man of the match. He did what he had to do really well, but again, this wasn't a performance where he was keeping out 9 or 10.
He's Roy Keane.
Well, that's right. He's doing his job, isn't he? I think the two centre backs I thought were both fantastic. Yes, there was a couple of misplaced passes in the first half, particularly from Mukiele, but I think both of them defended really well and did a great job. I also thought Wilson Isidore worked really hard again. He dropped in, kept the ball, won a couple of headers. And he's kind of stepped up a little bit, I think, from what we saw in the second half of last season in terms of his work rate. And he's looking really pretty comfortable in the Premier League. So, look, I think there's probably a few, but I would have gone Xhaka, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And just on this start, Danny, 11 points from 18. And look, we all want to get carried away. I want to get carried away. And, the Bon Jovi song didn't say we're quarter of the way there, but we are quarter of the way there to safety. Yeah. But looking based on the opposition we've had, you could go through them and, we could say, look, they've all had issues that, you could point to, or poor form, or change of manager or manager under pressure or whatever it is. But we've gone out and that's the opposition we've had, and we've picked up those points. So do we say that, look, we've got those points early doors, and now we have to kind of hunker down for a period of maybe not getting so many points? Or, look, do we say, look, we're in the Premier League, we're competing, we can go anywhere and take a result?
Yeah, someone said to me yesterday, actually, Chris, that, well, look at the teams you've played. Four of the bottom 5. Obviously, Palace were sat in the top, well, a second now, aren't they? But they were up there. But the other 4 teams we played previous to yesterday were in the bottom 5. And I said, well, yeah, you can only play what's in front of you. And let's not forget, we were one of the new teams coming up who teams would have been looking at thinking, oof, we've got Sunderland today, one of the new sides. You'd fancy your chances. So, again, yes, we haven't played City or a Spurs or an Arsenal yet. That's obviously going to come. But we've more than held our own in the games, as you say. I think there's respect there. Certainly, looking at Villa, I know Villa have had a ropey start, but watching the game last week where they're happy for us to have possession, and you've got Xhaka in there, and they'll look at one or two of our players and where we're sat in the table now and the start we've had, and thinking, do you know what, Sunderland are a half-decent side, aren't they? They've settled in quite well. We're not sat bottom of the pile on 2 points, scrambling away looking for our first win. So it's an important start we've had. We've carried on the momentum in the feel-good factor we had last season. Let's not forget, I said earlier in the week, we didn't blow the Championship apart last year and win it by 15 points. We came in through the back door, against Sheffield United. So, yeah, and then we built on there. The feel-good factor's still there at this moment in time. We'll go to United next week. I don't think we'll go there with any fear. Of course, they've got some quality players when they're at it in their ranks. But we'll go to Old Trafford next week. I think we'll have opportunities there, as they will as well. But we'll go there, and I'm sure Regis and the boys will be quietly confident we can go there and get results, as Brentford did yesterday at their place. So, fantastic start, and we keep on building. But yeah, as managers tend to often do, they might set a little, I've been there in the meeting room. Sam Allardyce, when I was at West Ham under Sam, we used to have on the board at the back of the meeting room, little blocks of 6 games, what points he thought we should be looking to get out of these games. And then if you don't get your tally, if you come up too short, where can we go trying to make those points up? And they like to do things Whereas then you'll get the odd manager who says, no, Regis is probably your prime example. He will say, one game at a time. We go for the next game. Barnsley and the likes try and get some information out of him, but he's just, no, the next game, the focus is on the next game, and that's how it's going to be. So keep on building. I know we're all looking at December, and we've got a good tally of points on the board before we get to those games, but I'm sure we'll chalk up a few more before we get to the likes of Man City.
Yeah, just quickly, on if Sam Allardyce had his board up on those first 6 games, Danny, would he have had 11 from 18, you reckon?
He'd have been confident. I think you've got to be confident as well. And you ask that, you take the question into the room as well to the boys, and that maybe sometimes you jot down what you think we're going to get to, and then you come up with an average for the room and stuff. Well, that's what you've set, lads. It's up to you to go out there and do it now. And if you come up short, that's where we've got to play catch up and all these little sort of mind games and that come into football really. But I was more of probably what Regis is like in terms of, right, Forest done great job. We probably, as Rob Mason always says when he's on with us, take your points on the road, try and get your 3 at home. Well, we've got two bonus points yesterday, really, haven't we? So there's credit in the bank. Now we go away to United next week. In worst cases, come away with a point if we can. If we can take another 3 points, then fantastic. And then get back to the Stadium of Light after that against Wolves after the break.
Yeah.
I think it's a really interesting one with the run of fixtures that we've had as well, because you can go out, you've played all the teams that are down the bottom, bar Palace, but they're down the bottom because we've taken points off them, or part of the reason is because we've taken points off them. But you look at every game, right, and you go, well, West Ham won, yeah, fine, but they went away to Forest and won, 3-0?
3-0,
the week or so after. Burnley, if it's one game you don't want to play Burnley away, it's the first game of the season at home for them. So we've had a tough game. I would much rather have played Burnley in March at Turf Moor. So that's not necessarily an easy game on paper. Brentford have just gone and beaten Man U. They picked up points against Chelsea and stuff like that. So it's not as if we've played a load of teams who were sat at the bottom with no points. All these other teams have picked up points from each other as well. So I think, as I've said a few times, that run of fixtures is only a nice run of fixtures if we pick up points, because if we hadn't picked up points from them, you're looking at going, where the hell are we going to get points from this season? So, it's only a good run if we've actually taken points, which we have done.
Yeah. On top of that as well, Martin, I think the top teams are still trying to sort themselves out. I mean, Liverpool get beat yesterday, but prior to that, they were scratchy, weren't they? They were getting over the line in the last few minutes of games as well. Spurs, again, yesterday, you would have looked at that thinking that's a banker at home against Wolves. Man City lost to Bournemouth, lost to Spurs. Drew with Arsenal last week, I think, didn't they? And then obviously they won yesterday, but they've had, are they sat below us still, aren't they, in the league? So you're looking at, and even the big teams, Chelsea got beat yesterday against Brighton. So even the big hitters are still trying to sort themselves out and find their feet as well. So you never know.
Yeah.
All good.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you, Martin, just kind of moving forward, and Danny's already mentioned these next block of fixtures. Is this the big test, not just for the players, but for the fans as well? That, after this great start, you might find, everyone wants to get carried away because it's been so long, but that almost we have to accept that we're going to take some hits, and there's going to be a bad run this season, and the fans have got to remember what the prize is at the end. That 17th is a fantastic end to the season if that's how it turns out. But we are going to face a bad run at some point, aren't we?
Well, I think we are, but what that bad run is and the scale of it, we just don't know, do we? And that's the thing. I don't see a situation where we, touch wood, and we'll probably replay this in a few weeks' time and go, you're a bloody idiot. But I don't see a run where we're getting hammered for 4 or 5 games in quick succession. I don't see us conceding 4, 5, 6 goals for a number of games. I don't think we're that sort of team. I think, we might lose out. I think our goal scoring still hasn't necessarily been firing on as many cylinders as you'd like it to say. I think we've looked stronger defensively than we necessarily have in attack. But to me, there are areas that we can improve on, and there are areas that we can kind of see the players settling down. As I said earlier, this team's still getting to know each other, and we just don't know what they're capable of. So, we'll obviously go through a spell where we don't pick up as many points in a run of games as we expect to. It might not be the run of games that we kind of envisage it being as well. We're all looking at December and going, bloody hell, that's a tough month. But, who knows what we pick up in December? We might go on a bad run in February or March where we've got, on paper, easier fixtures. But I just think it's a really, really exciting time to watch us, because we just do not know what this team's capable of. And if we can get to December, picking up points here and there and looking pretty comfortable, what does that enable in terms of transfers and recruitment in January? Because if players are coming in and going, oh, actually they're going to stay up this season and we can go on to something else, then that's a far more attractive proposition than being bogged down at the bottom trying to sign a couple of players to help you stay up. But all that said, I think all of us would still go, if we finish 17th, be pretty bloody happy about that, because the goal for this season is to stay up. And for me, that hasn't changed in the slightest. What's interesting is the players you listen to, I think it was Mukiele after the game, and somebody asked him about that, is the target staying up? The target is to get as many points as we can. We're not talking about avoiding relegation. We're talking about just going out and winning football matches. And that kind of speaks back to Danny's point about how Labris is probably approaching it. Let's go out and get some points from this game. We've got nothing to fear from anybody. And if we take a Tonkin, so what? We'll come back and be strong. And I think, the good thing, we saw it last season, right? We got turned over at Coventry. We didn't necessarily let that affect us. He's very single-minded, and he's not an emotional manager. And he doesn't seem to carry that last defeat. He'll write it off. This is a new game. And that'll really stand us in good stead when that happens, because it's a will, right? But I think we've got the right leadership from the manager and from Xhaka to not let a defeat or a few defeats overly impact the mood and what we're actually trying to achieve.
Yeah. And just to finish this off, Danny, an easy trip to Old Trafford next, where the lads are going to pick up the next 3 points. But are you on the road again?
I'm not sure what's happening for that one. No, actually, I think they said Fabio Barini's doing it. So the title is, was it my away day or something like that? So so mine was the first trial run yesterday. And I think they've got Fabio Barini down there next week. But see what happens in the future, yeah. But it was good. Good, because I've never really watched the game with the fans, Chris, do you know what I mean? So it's certainly, obviously at home's different, isn't it? Where I'm generally on the gantry, whereas getting away, and obviously the lads who had 1 or 2 beers on the way down and ran the local pubs before the game. So getting the atmosphere in there was a good experience yesterday, yeah, and certainly helps when you get the results as well. But on to United next and try and build from there.
Now we know the reason for your croaky voice. It's become clear now. But yeah, so that's a nice place to finish off. So that just leaves me to say thank you very much, Martin. Always a pleasure, mate.
Cheers, Chris, and thank you, Danny, for joining us today. It's been good to have you on,
cheers, mate. Enjoyed it. Okay, good stuff.
Yeah, Danny, it'd be great to catch up again, and hopefully everyone sees you at the Stadium of Light very soon, mate.
Okay, cheers, Chris. Yeah, cheers, Martin.
Good stuff. And thanks again to everyone for listening. Of course, we'll have all the reaction or more reaction on the Rugby Report website, of course, and we won't have to wait very long for another How the podcast to drop very soon, although it will be on this week, of course, which we start off every week on Monday, but then we'll be back into going back through this again and looking ahead to an easy trip to Old Trafford, which hopefully it will be. But I'm sure Ruben Amorim is already quaking in his boots that Sunderland are coming to town. But from us, it's bye for now.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
At Arizona State University, we're bringing world-class education from our globally acclaimed faculty to you. Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Learn more at asuonline.asu.edu.